Since its release in 2012, Sleeping Dogs has often been labeled as a GTA clone, which is not only unfair, but also incredibly superficial. It's true that both games belong to the open world genre and share similar elements, such as free city exploration, driving mechanics, and various side activities. However, Sleeping Dogs sets itself apart from the competition through its unique approach to gameplay, its inspiration drawn from Hong Kong action cinema, and its innovative hand-to-hand combat mechanics. Unlike the Grand Theft Auto series, which places heavy emphasis on gunplay and a satirical take on American culture, Sleeping Dogs offers something entirely different. A gripping undercover cop story infiltrating the triads combined with a combat system centered around martial arts. The fighting mechanics are designed to resemble classic Hong Kong action films in the style of Jackie Chan or Donnie Yen. Wei Shen is not just another criminal, he is a highly trained agent capable of seamlessly transitioning between hand-to-hand combat, acrobatic dodges, and brutal environmental executions. Another standout feature of Sleeping Dogs is its exceptional setting, Hong Kong. Open-world games often place players in American cities or fictional locations inspired by Los Angeles or New York. Sleeping Dogs, though, takes us to an Asian metropolis filled with neon lights, narrow alleyways, bustling street markets, and distinctive architecture, creating an atmosphere unlike any other game in the genre. Open-world games often struggle to deliver an engaging story. Narratives tend to be stretched thin, diluted, and packed with filler content. Sleeping Dogs, though, takes a completely different approach. Instead of yet another story about rising through the ranks of the criminal underworld, we get a high-stakes crime thriller where the protagonist is constantly teetering on the edge of law and loyalty. Wei Shen is not your typical action game protagonist. He's a man returning to Hong Kong after years spent in the United States, but his homecoming isn't sentimental, it's a mission. As an undercover agent, he must infiltrate the triads and dismantle the organization from within. The problem is, when you spend every waking moment with criminals, the line between who you are and who you pretend to be begins to blur. Wei quickly realizes that the people he's supposed to destroy aren't just bad gangsters. They're also his friends, his brothers, his new family. Every mission isn't just a risk of exposure, it's also a battle with his own conscience. And it's this internal conflict that makes Sleeping Dogs captivating from the very first minutes. There are no purely black and white characters here. The police Wei works for aren't spotless. The triads, despite their brutality, follow a code of honor. And our protagonist, with every step he takes, the line between right and wrong, between duty and loyalty, becomes increasingly blurred. All of this makes the story more than just a backdrop for chaos. It's a fully fledged crime thriller that feels like watching the best films in the style of Infernal Affairs or Donnie Brasco. You step into this world, and before you know it, you are knee-deep in a triad war. Now, when you think of open world games, the first things that come to mind are usually gunfights, car chases, and street chaos. But Sleeping Dogs took a completely different route. Instead of the standard pull out a gun and start shooting, it focuses on hand-to-hand combat. And not just any combat. This isn't some clunky brawler where you randomly mash buttons hoping for the best. Every fight in Sleeping Dogs is a brutal, well-choreographed spectacle that makes you feel like a star of a classic Hong Kong action film. The combat system in this game is pure satisfaction. Every punch has weight, every counterattack gives you an edge, and enemy takedowns can be so vicious that you might need a moment to catch your breath. Wei Shen isn't just a brute swinging his fists at random. He's a trained martial artist who can fluidly take down multiple enemies with the precision and grace of a kung fu master. And the best part, there's no mindless button mashing here. Timing, reflexes, and strategy matter. But you know what makes these fights even more intense? The environment. Sleeping Dogs features some of the most creative environmental executions in gaming history. You can grab an enemy and slam him onto a stall full of flopping fish, smash his face into an air conditioning fan, or if you really want to channel an 80s action movie villain, toss him into a furnace or shatter him against a glowing neon sign. Every fight becomes an opportunity for cinematic destruction, keeping combat fresh and thrilling even after hours of gameplay. Many players compare Sleeping Dogs' combat system to the Batman Arkham series, but the truth is, this game has its own distinct style. There are no superhuman combos or unrealistic acrobatics, just raw, aggressive street fighting where every second counts. If you mistime a counter or let yourself get surrounded, you are in some real trouble. That's what makes the combat feel so intense, so dynamic, and most importantly, so damn satisfying. Now, most open world games take place in American cities. Take Los Angeles, New York, Miami for example, and while these locations are often beautifully recreated, they can start to feel a bit repetitive. Sleeping Dogs, though, does something different. It transports players to Hong Kong and does it in a way that makes you feel like you are truly walking through the crowded streets of this vibrant metropolis. This city feels alive. Just take a nighttime stroll through the bustling marketplace and you'll feel the atmosphere. Crowds push past each other between vendor stalls, neon signs reflect off the wet pavement, and street sellers loudly call out to passerbys, urging them to buy their goods. You can step into a small food stand, grab a steaming bowl of noodles, and moments later, slam an enemy against a wall plastered with old movie posters. Every corner of the game looks like a frame from a high-energy action film. One of the key elements that brings Sleeping Dogs' world to life is the weather. Rain is a frequent companion, and when the droplets start to fall, the entire city transforms. The lights shimmer in puddles, the streets glisten, and pedestrians hurriedly pull out umbrellas to shield themselves from the downpour. It's visual poetry that you just can't help but admire. I mean, just hop into a car and take a drive through the city at night, and you'll immediately understand how breathtaking this world truly is. The developers put immense effort into authenticity. Before creating the game, they actually traveled to Hong Kong, took hundreds of photos, and recorded hours of footage to capture the city as accurately as possible. And it shows. Every corner feels like a real place, from the crowded streets of Bangkok to the luxurious high-rise apartments. You don't feel like you're playing in a generic Asian city. You're playing in Hong Kong, a city that breathes, pulses with energy, and has its own unique character. This is one of those locations that truly draws you in. You want to come back. You want to explore every alleyway. You want to drive through the neon-lit streets at night. In Sleeping Dogs, Hong Kong isn't just a backdrop. It's the heart of the entire story. Many open-world games struggle with mission design. Either they're repetitive, formulaic, or just plain dull. Sleeping Dogs, though, stands out because every mission, even the ones that seem simple at first glance, can turn into a full-blown action-packed roller coaster. This is what makes the game so addictive. You never know what's coming next. Take, for example, a mission that starts as a seemingly mundane errand, escorting the fiancé of a major gangster as she prepares for her wedding. A casual drive around the city, picking out a wedding dress, some lighthearted conversation, and then suddenly everything spirals out of control. You find yourself stealing a rare flower from a heavily guarded temple, dodging monks who turn out to be better fighters than most triad enforcers. And of course, it all ends with a high-speed getaway, because how could it not? That's the genius of Sleeping Dogs. Missions always have layers. They always surprise you and always keep you glued to the controller. One moment, you're singing karaoke with your buddies. The next, you're storming a temple to take down a gang of armed thugs. Think you're in for a quiet job? Suddenly the cops show up and you are racing through half the city to escape. And it's not just the main missions that impress. The side objectives are just as compelling. You can take part in illegal street races through Hong Kong's bustling roads, fight in underground martial arts tournaments, or conduct investigations as an undercover cop. There's even a subplot about a serial killer harvesting organs from his victims, a dark, twisted crime thriller embedded within the larger gangster story. Every mission in Sleeping Dogs has something special. Even the ones that seem standard at first always have a unique twist that makes them memorable. This ensures that the game never feels stale, not for a second, and in an open-world game, that's a rare and impressive feat. One of the most underrated aspects of Sleeping Dogs is the quality of its voice acting. The cast is a masterpiece, a group of talents who not only embody their roles, but make the characters feel authentic and alive. Every dialogue sounds natural, and the emotions are so palpable that it feels like you're watching a high-budget action film. Wei Shen, the main character, is phenomenally voiced by William Lee. His voice perfectly captures both the toughness and brutality required to infiltrate the Triad's ranks, as well as the inner turmoil of a protagonist who begins to lose his sense of self. When Wei is in the action, you can hear the aggression and determination in his voice. But when he talks to his friends, he's charismatic and authentic. The supporting cast also delivers very strong performances. Edison Chen as Jackie Ma is excellent as Wei's childhood friend, who helps him get into the Triad structure but is naive enough to get himself into trouble. Kelly Hu as Inspector Tang adds a sense of gravity and professionalism, creating a great contrast to the brutal world of the Triad. Then there's James Hong as the influential and ruthless Uncle Po, and Tom Wilkinson as the cold and calculating Thomas Pendrew, the head of the Hong Kong police who never inspires trust from the start. Each character has a unique speaking style, and the actors don't just read the lines, they perform them. It's clear that the cast fully understood their roles and gave Sleeping Dogs a sense of credibility. Because of this, every conversation in the game carries weight and atmosphere, making it pretty hard to tear yourself away from the story. Driving in Sleeping Dogs is more than just a way to get from point A to point B. It is pure adrenaline, full of spectacular chases, illegal races, and acrobatic maneuvers that make every moment behind the wheel immensely satisfying. The driving model doesn't try to be realistic. Instead, we get a dynamic, arcade-like driving experience that allows for flashy drifts, sharp turns, and graceful lane changes as you weave through the crowded streets of Hong Kong. One of the best aspects of the driving system is the ability to leap between moving cars. This is something missing in many games. Here, if your vehicle is damaged or you want to take another car during a chase, you can simply jump onto the hood and leap onto the adjacent vehicle like in the best action films. It looks incredibly spectacular and is one of those mechanics that never gets old. And we can't forget about the street races either. These are brilliantly designed, requiring quick reflexes, aggressive driving, and the skill to use nitro at just the right moments. The tracks wind through narrow alleys, wide highways, and Hong Kong's hills, making every lap thrilling. And of course, the police. In theory, it should be difficult to shake off officers with their sirens blaring, but their artificial intelligence is, to put it mildly, not the most aggressive. More often than not, it feels like the cops don't quite know how to effectively take you down, leading to some unintentionally hilarious moments. That being said, chases can still be thrilling, especially if you pull off some cinematic maneuvers or switch vehicles mid-pursuit. Sleeping Dogs is one of those games that, despite its quality, never truly received the recognition it deserved. The combination of brutal, satisfying melee combat, a well-crafted story, and an immersive world ensures that even years later, the game hasn't lost its charm. Every aspect, from the voice acting and the unmistakable atmosphere of Hong Kong to the unique fighting system and high-energy chases, was fine-tuned to near perfection. Yet, it's a title that faded into the shadows of bigger productions. Maybe it lacked the marketing push of other blockbuster hits, or maybe it was just unlucky enough to release during a time when open-world games were dominated by giants like GTA. But one thing is certain, those who gave it a chance know exactly what kind of hidden gem they had in their hands. This isn't just another cookie-cutter action game, it's a gripping story about loyalty, betrayal, and walking the fine line between good and evil. And that's exactly why Sleeping Dogs deserves a comeback. In an era where more and more games are receiving remakes and sequels, this one is particularly begging for a second chance. Imagine the same story, but built on a modern game engine, with even more refined combat and a larger, more vibrant Hong Kong. Or even better, a sequel that continues Wei Shen's journey, showing what happened to him after the events of the first game. This isn't a game that should be forgotten. It's a title that still holds enormous potential, and it'd be a shame if it remained nothing more than a distant memory.